in order. If you would, join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. We've had a chance to look at the minutes from the October 12th meeting. Anybody have any questions about those? If none, is there a motion to approve the minutes after?
We actually have a comment.
Oh, sorry.
No, you didn't hear my
I
hand.
didn't.
There was discussion that we had at the last meeting about setting a tentative time for November the 9th for participation for BZA interviews, but we didn't actually finalize that. It was still in discussion for at that meeting, so it was something I wanted to bring up tonight and finalize, so I don't know how you want to proceed.
How does it say in there?
It says the board agreed to meet at 4:30 p.m. November 9th, 2015, to interview people who would like to participate in board zoning appeals.
Well, that may be, let's talk
Good,
about.
it's a good segue.
Yeah, it's a
So
good
if we
segue.
want to,
Mr. Gabbard has a conflict that night.
I'm unavailable to be here that entire night.
okay.
And I was going to mention that if it were possible, and Linda, I don't know how this would affect your business, but moving from those two Mondays to the 16th and the 30th,
Whatever works for you guys, it's fine
which
with
would be
me.
the final Monday of
Actually,
the
that's
month.
better for me. I'm at a conference, November 8th to the 11th.
I'm out of the country, so,
Oh, well, that's bigger than me.
yeah, well, I'd rather be here, trust me.
Anyway.
It's
No,
not for work.
I'm fine with doing the 16th through the 30th. And then that actually leads to something Jack and I talked about was, you know, in the past, there have been times when we've only met once in December.
Right.
So if we meet in November 30th, perhaps we'd only want to have one meeting in December. But that's strictly up to you guys. It doesn't matter to me. I'll be around.
So in that vein, to correct these minutes, we would need to strike that, or just say there was discussion of it?
Yeah, there was discussion. I don't believe the agreement came because I wanted to make sure that was something we talked about. It was kind of more of a heads up at that point.
Okay.
The easiest thing to do is just to strike it. If there was no action taken, there's no reason to have it in the minutes.
Okay, so a motion to strike that information in the minutes.
I don't even think, since you haven't approved the minutes, so I'll just strike it and you can just make a motion to approve the minutes with
With the
taking that
amendment.
out.
There you go.
Perfect. Okay, that makes perfect sense. Okay. so a
What I
motion-
just said, yeah.
Yeah, there's a motion to approve the minutes with that section of the minutes being removed. So moved.
Second,
Mr. Mearsclaw?
Yay.
Mr. Gabbard?
yay.
Mr. Wade?
Yay. Then we'll talk about, when we get down to, at the end of the meeting, when we talk about comments and staff reports, we'll talk about the change of the meeting dates, okay?
And the BZA interviews.
Okay. And Linda, your fiscal officer's report?
The board's, you received a copy of the revenue and appropriation status report as well as the fund status report. And as I do every month, I'm gonna read in the record that we have $13,804,280.93 in our investment and checking accounts.
Okay. And we have the current bills to pay. We have had a chance to take a look at the current bills. Anybody have any additions or any questions about the current bills? Is there a motion to pay the bills?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Gabbard?
Yay.
Mr. Mearsclaw?
Yay.
Mr. Wade?
Yay. And we do have an executive session scheduled, but before we go to that, we do have a committee here that worked with Jack and others on the health insurance. Are you guys ready, and I'm sure, you guys ready to do a proposal? Or-
Yeah, maybe I'll give you a little bit of a segue. So the employee committee, which consisted of Sergeant Cornett, Officer Bates, Jason Bates, Jeff Palmer, Justin Knoll, and Brian Likens from the fire department, and then Ryan Jones out of the road department. And I think the first meeting was in April, somewhere back in April, and Frank Harmon with Ohio Insurance Services has been at those meetings to help them start to talk through the insurance. And I think my expectation was at the end of the year, or when we got to the renewal process, they would put their arms around something to present back to the trustees as far as what the insurance option or options would be. So I think we're at that point where we have renewals in hand and they've deliberated some different options. I believe Larry Cornett and Jeff Palmer are gonna be the ones that kind of give you the nuts and bolts, but there are other committee members here to have the dialogue as well.
Okay, very good. Gentlemen, whoever would like to start, or tag team, however.
Larry is the man. I'm just here for support.
Oh, thank you.
Handed that off quite nicely.
A lot of things have been handed off nicely. I'm trying to gather my thoughts quickly. This wasn't the format and what we were told as to addressing you guys. So for that, I apologize. First, I do want to express sincere thanks to Mr. Herman and his company for all of the hard work in trying to get a bunch of cops and firemen and zoning people to understand the insurance business and how it operates. They've definitely gone above and beyond in servicing the township and its employees in doing so. Not knowing what Mr. Cameron has provided to you, we have talked in length, as he said, since April about our health insurance and what is best not only for the employee and for the township for savings. We have screened our employees, both police and fire and zoning, with the proposals that we were given. And they have asked that we stay with our Anthem renewal as a PPO. I know that Mr. Cameron has provided other information and other savings. As of right now, the uncertainty of healthcare and where it's going to be with the Affordable Care Act is an uncertainty. And part of the reason why we wanted to stay with Anthem is when all of this started. And that was with Mr. Muerspaw stating that he could provide us with the same insurance at a drastically lower rate, $1,000 a day, I believe. So that was what the union members were going on after, is to make sure that we met your requirements and fulfilled your statements. And I think we've done that. I mean, it's not as drastic as savings as we thought it would be, but it's still savings to both the township and the employee. So I'm willing and able to answer questions as to the other plans, if that's what you would like.
Okay. Jack, do you have the breakdown that you gave us?
You need a copy of it?
Yeah.
Sure.
So that we have it.
Doing what, the side by side?
Yeah.
I brought mine.
There you go. You don't need one, do
No, but is there more than that page?
you? Yeah, well, there's the other information.
Yeah, I didn't have
Gets to
okay.
that.
Right.
And that, if you want me to tell you what is included in that packet,
Yes.
you have sheets in there which have Ohio Insurance Services, and I think they're in the rear. Those are the actual renewals showing the different, whether it's Anthem or United, and then the type of plan it is and the premium cost broken down for single employee, child, employee, spouse, and family. So that's in the rear of the packet. Those were the renewals we got for 2016. Then what else you have in there is a breakdown of cost comparison with our current Anthem premium, like what we're paying today, compared to each one of those plans that were quoted. On the front sheet was the compilation of all of those side by side compared, which shows township cost and employee cost for each one of those plans, again compared back to what we're currently paying. So basically it shows you the savings versus the current, because all of the renewals are a decrease to what we're currently paying. With we've modeled a couple, with an Anthem and a United HSA.
Yeah. Let me ask a question. On this, on the very first page, it shows the comparison. So the total township cost 1.2 million in the first column, and then the renewal 1.097.
Correct.
So this is the renewal cost that you're suggesting
That's correct.
as compared to what we were, okay?
Which is what the October meeting gave us the direction for.
Okay.
Now, obviously, there's other numbers on that sheet, and if you want to talk about those other numbers, then we do have representatives from the fire union here to where we can do so.
I guess I would be curious, my first question would be is, the HSA, that's not something that you guys just, or, I'm surprised that you're not interested in that, quite honestly. It's typically, it can be a money in your pocket situation.
Absolutely, and, you know, unfortunately for me, or maybe fortunately for me, I was raised in this township, and I was always told to try to be amicable to both sides. And we were going off of the marching orders in October of the same insurance at a lower rate. Now, we are prepared to talk about these others, and there's great concerns with the HSA as to how long is it funded. Right now, with these numbers, we can say that we can fund this for 4 years. I don't know if the board wants to fund that. In one of our meetings, it was said that it would only be funded for 1 year. So that's a huge liability to everybody, especially to our clerks that don't make a whole lot of money. $5,200 hit would be huge. So there are mechanisms that we can do to protect the employees. We can do a memorandum of understanding saying that it will be funded for X amount of time. To also include how it's going to be funded. When is the township going to fund it? Is it going to fund it on January 1 and it's full? Is it going to quarterly fund it? Put a clause in there if there is a incident where that employee is at their deductible in the first month, and well, we're not to the first quarter yet, to fund it to where that person is whole and is not hurt. So there's ways for us to get there, but it takes direction from you three as what we are willing to do.
Okay.
I think that's a legitimate concern.
Okay.
I mean, I think you look at this as it sits, with both sides, if these numbers are at 100% funded, and that continues, and we continue to see the savings of doing those, I mean, I guess I would defer to you as to what level we could make such a guarantee. And we would need to know the nuts and bolts of that.
Yeah, I mean, you have an MOU, if you don't have the money, you don't have the money, I mean, that's.
Right.
Jack, on there's different amounts of savings for the employees. The family premiums on the first column, the Anthem, that would be $316 savings for the employee per year that's on a family plan.
Correct. The very bottom shows the annual savings compared to the current amount you're paying
Correct.
for each one of those plans.
So that's how much, in essence, it would go down $300. But if we were to go with the HSA, it would be $1,550 savings per employee.
Correct. The United HSA that we got quoted is a little over 1,500 that you wouldn't pay in premium that you are today.
And Mr. Wade, you can correct me with this statement if I'm wrong. You know, do you guys have this sheet anywhere from Mr. Harmon's office? Do they have this sheet?
Yeah.
I only have two, I apologize.
I brought some extra copies.
Who can share?
This might make it a little easier in seeing the annual savings. I gave you one.
Thank you.
Those savings that you see is an all-in savings. If you're doing a 60-40, half of you're on, half of you're off, those numbers aren't correct.
Right.
So we wouldn't also be in favor of a dual choice plan either, knowing that the HSA wouldn't be funded at some point in time if you stayed on a traditional PPO. You know, depending on when you went to the HSA, you know, you might not have any funding or no help whatsoever. So we don't see that as a benefit either.
United Healthcare PPO that matches up with the Anthem PPO saves another $112,000.
It does.
Is
And
that with what are we missing anything in coverages or?
it's the same health certificate to my understanding.
It's the same level of benefits in the network. The non-network side is a little bit higher, but again, it's pretty difficult to go out of network. They have all the hospitals, all the physicians are in, and they have a national network just like Anthem.
And the nice thing with United Healthcare is they have locked our rates until the end of 2017 with one increase of 11.3%. And that's for the PPO and the HSA.
So I have to ask the question, then I'm curious as to why you didn't choose the United PPO. Is it purely based on the out-of-network issues?
It's purely based on what was told by the Board of Trustees to the employees. That we can provide the exact same coverage at a cheaper rate. So,
Okay, well,
so that's why we said
That
it.
just confused me then. You
Well,
just,
we're with Anthem currently.
right,
We don't have to switch anything with our doctors. We
Right.
don't have to do anything else. And that's what Mr. Muterspaw said that he was able to do.
well,
So,
But-
so that's what we've came
okay,
with.
well, wait a minute. Okay, then if you go to United, but we can save more money, but you just said it's the same care, why is that not
Because
the
it's
same
a,
thing?
it's a different carrier. In the contracts read, there's some language in there that says that there's some things that have to be done if we switch carriers. So
Okay.
that's, keeps us true to what you guys said.
What are those things? I mean, are these insurmountable, are these
No,
terrible,
they're,
bad things?
they're easy to overcome.
Okay.
We've already overcame it from sitting here talking and having the fire union present. So we've met that hurdle. Now it's just the dialogue as to where we want to go and how we want to get there. So we wanted to be true to you as you were true to us.
Well, I think, to clarify my position on what I thought we could do, we can provide the same types of coverage at a much, much better rate. There's never going to be an exact, even if you stay with the same carrier, an exact duplication from one year to the other. But, you know, the essence of the message is we could provide great service.
Absolutely.
And save money for you guys.
I gotta start somewhere. So,
Okay.
and we reviewed the video, made sure that we were on the same page from the October meeting, and so that's why we started with number 2. We're not opposed to number 3.
Gotcha.
And we can talk about number 4.
Okay, I'm still back on 5. Forgive me.
Okay?
I guess first thing I'd like to clarify is there was board direction, there was what Mr. Mueller stated versus what I stated versus what Mr. Wade stated.
Exactly.
Okay. Secondly, I'll ask the question again, is the out-of-network PPO concern the major hurdle for step 5?
For the HSA?
No, for the United PPO.
Say your question again, make sure I
I think
understand.
maybe you misunderstood which one I was talking about.
Yeah.
When you compare the Anthem renewal to the United PPO,
We're fine with the United PPO.
okay?
We are.
And you see the downside of the HSA being the no guarantee of the funding and potential issues early on in the year, or special situations, let's call it.
Correct.
Okay.
And that's all wording that can be worded into an MOU.
Right.
You know, if the board was considering the HSA from the union standpoint, we would ask that it be funded for the 3 years, as discussed in this letter from Frank's office. You're more than able to fund it full 3 years. It does a couple of things. It gets us into a contract to where we can actually negotiate a little better and see what we're able to do at that point as well. And, you know, 3 years also gets us over the hurdle of the Affordable Health Care Act, what's going to happen in 2018.
Another question. Jack, with the United Healthcare HSA, it shows a savings of $668,000, okay? Included in that is the level that we're going to fund that included, we have to put that money back in.
The total, that's a premium difference to the total if you fund the HSA 100%, it's about $200,000 you're gonna save versus what we're currently paying.
Okay.
And having funded the HSA.
Yeah, so this changes to basically.
The 199.
Yep.
Exactly.
All right.
Mr. Wade, if I may, if you look at that, the cost to fully fund is $369,200. So out of that $668,000, you would still save a net $300 the first year. Then if we took a look at the HSA and that 11.3% number, because it's of the lower premium number, the second year, you'd still save a net $200,000 after fully funding, and then even with a 15% renewal in that going into the third year, if it were that, we don't know what's going to be in that third year, but you'd still realize about a $100,000 savings at a 15% renewal, and about a 20% would be maybe a $20,000 savings if it were fully funded.
Do we think that the United PPO, and I can see the savings with the HSA is going to change, but we don't really know. I mean, we don't know how the savings is gonna stay with the United PPO either. Is it gonna stay 211, it's gonna go to 100 the next year and 50 or go away?
You know, I would say one thing, just knowing what some of the other carriers are putting forth as their best plan design. there's not many companies, and even if we left Anthem, I don't know if they're not offering the plan that we have today any longer for new clients. So, at some point, the plan that everybody has come to know and love over the years is gonna go away. Probably in the next 2 years, that plan, I would venture to say, will probably no longer be available. And I'm just speaking from a strictly benefit and cost standpoint. There's always a lot of other issues involved. But when I look at the numbers, the coverage, what the township could do to fund, and what, if I were a township employee, could save from not being taken out of my paycheck every month, it'd be very, very hard pressed for me not to look at that HSA very, very strongly. It happens to be where it seems everybody captures the most amount of savings. And I can't speak for the committee, but I think there was certainly some concern for the committee. Anytime you go on an HSA type plan, again, when the funding is scaled back or the funding is non-existent at some point down the road, that can be a little bit of a hardship for some members. So I think that was, as the sergeant said, I think a concern was the funding levels and how long the funding would continue on the township side. Larry, did I say that okay?
You said it just fine.
Okay. I don't want to leave your life.
I certainly, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And you know, probably one of the things that scared us the most was, prior to our last meeting, we were told that it would only be funded 100% the first year. And that was before we had some better numbers. And so that really put a light bulb in our head as to, why am I gonna open up a larger liability to our staff, knowing that, well, I'm only gonna get funded 1 year. So, unless we have something in writing, then, that says that it will be, then.
Okay. All right, what's our time, to get this done, we need to make a decision here rather quick,
Yes,
but to get
No.
it done for renewal.
before November 1st to take advantage of the rates we got, and that was done because there were some changes coming to group ratings, et cetera, from the Affordable Care Act. So the United rates are, if you go United, they start December 1st and they go through September of next year, and then that 11.3 takes effect October 1st, goes through September 30th of 2017. So you could take advantage of the United rates through September of 2017, but you would need to do it probably tonight unless you want to meet before November 1st again.
And I don't know if I mentioned this before regarding the HSA, whatever funding level you decide, we also would need language in an MOU as to how that was dispersed. So I know Frank made the suggestion, the first year of an HSA that's funded fully on the first day of it.
Day one.
And then on the renewal years, it could be done quarterly, but if that is done, there has to be language in there to where if there is that event prior to that quarter, that money is given, so. Just the only other thought I have.
Mr. Palmer?
As I told Larry earlier, he is the guru from the group on knowing all the insurance in and out, so I defer to him for most of it. The angst that I'm talking with others is, where does it end with 100%, and when do we start picking up comparable? When we went to 15%, we had 3 years to know we were getting there. I think that is something that we're all trying to figure out. I mean, we know our current plan is not gonna last forever. We know that other options exist, but we don't know when we need to pick up all the other option elements. And that's part of the discussion here tonight. Where do you feel comfortable, and where would the guidance be from this body that this is where we're going, so that we can get the best insurance for all of us, and something that we can plan for all income levels.
That's-
Okay. Well, then we need to get it into the contract.
Right. So aside from the concern about the funding, everything else about the plan everybody was comfortable with?
So just the uncertainty of if you chose that route, and then obviously there's some issues with the elected officials as to who gets the HSA versus who doesn't off the get-go as to pay raises. So Mr. Gabbard and Ms. Hoda would, Mr. Wade and Mr. Mearsclaw, you would not.
Right.
That's
I
not,
can live with that.
Is that true?
it is true, yeah.
I don't
Because
think we can either. Unless
You
Brian
can
says
at
we
the-
can, and if Brian says we can, I'm great, yeah.
I believe you can at the start of your next term. Yeah, correct.
But it seems to me for the savings for the employee, that the HSA is a good idea, but we need to come to some terms that we would agree on how long we're gonna fund it and to what level. So, and what that saves us. So what if we funded it fully for 2 years, and then went to the end of the, and this is, as Larry would say, this is a starting point. Then we went to 15% level, where they would pick up 15% at the start of the third year. I mean, is that a feasible thing that would work? And let me ask you, Jack, too, do you have any, I'm sure you've thought about this a lot, so this is, do you have anything that you have in your mind that you think would be the best for the employees in the township?
As we've talked some, and as we've talked in the committee, I think you have to get that HSA seated, because right now you're transitioning to something different that leaves them open, so I think 100% is absolutely appropriate. You have a lot of savings you can point at to say this makes sense. So I think that makes a lot of sense. 2 years is probably a good time frame to at least say 100%. The third year, you know, that's, as I've told these guys, you're in a contract at the end of that year, so you can always negotiate something, but if you're throwing out the two options as possibilities, and you're choosing that route knowing, hey, that'll be 85% in that 2018, you know, so you can choose to do that or not. So I think that's more than appropriate, and people can make a choice. You're saving $1,500 as a family on your premium. If you don't use it all, it stays in a savings account, so you're actually building some up.
Is that
So
an interest-bearing savings account?
Yeah, at least if a third it is.
Whatever interest you can get.
That's still something.
Which is taken up by bank fees and each month, so it's really
Yeah,
not.
the interest is not gonna run the.
Well, you wouldn't pay those, we would have a fee per user.
Okay.
So, the things I know about the HSA, you have to declare how you are putting your funding into the account, and everyone is treated equal, so if you do it first of the year, everyone's first of the year. If it's quarterly, everyone's quarterly, so you can't do it different for different people. Follows a calendar year, so if you say what it is for 17, even though the plan might change October 1st, the HSA still follows its funding structure for that year.
Is it an impossibility to have a choice staying with, under the United plans, the employees choosing the PPO or the HSA? Is that doable?
Well, we're still gonna have to have the PPO option,
Right.
no matter what we do, because you two can't move to the HSA, so, yeah, I don't know that you can have both options, whether one person does it or everybody does it. You can throw both of them out there as options.
We could have both options for elected officials. We could actually implement an HRA with the HSA plan until you're able to have an HSA account. We could do that. So we could do one or both, or keep the options available, yeah.
We can, are you saying you can have those options for everyone?
You could make it a true dual choice.
To-
So if I
You
wanted,
want a dual choice, or-
Well, the negative with the dual choice, depending, you know, we've only been talking about an HSA, and now we brought in an HRA, so we're changing oil and water again, but, you know, if I don't go to the HSA the first 2 years, I'm gonna lose that funding if you don't fund it on the 3rd year. If I chose to stay at the PPO. And then, you know, that would hurt me, would hurt anybody else that stayed on the traditional plan. So I don't see,
Many people pick up, yeah.
right, so I would think that it would be better for the township, whether it's saying we're gonna do the PPO or do the HSA, that way you can actually see the savings that has been quoted to you by Mr. Harmon's group. Because those aren't 60-40 numbers, those are 100% numbers. And, you know, the other thing with paying, you know, we are paying 15% of the premium. And that's 5% more than all the other townships in the state of Ohio. So, you know, we've always negotiated for the better insurance. And, you know, with that in mind, you know, the numbers that Mr. Harmon has provided definitely gives you the ability to go 3 years and even into a 4th year if you wanted to.
Can we do 2 years funded, and then, what's the contract on?
At the end of 2 years.
We'd be negotiating that then at that point, wouldn't
We could. Or I have a leg up on you in the negotiations if I had 3.
we? Understood.
I'm honest!
That didn't take long.
We appreciate that.
Okay.
But, I mean, the savings are there. I mean,
Right.
so,
My thought is if the concern is, that wasn't even a factor in my mind, to be honest with you, Larry, that we were going to fund it 100% for 2 years. That's where I was coming into this. Seeing the savings, we know 2018 is going to be a whole new world for this particular subject. It is not just for us, but for everybody.
and one of the things, not to interrupt, but one of the things the board could consider would be, because there's still savings, even if going into 2018, we got a 20% renewal, there'd still be some savings with fully funding it.
Sure.
As long as everybody's okay, you could put something like, as long as going into 2018, the renewal is 20% or less, we'll fully fund it. And then if it's over that, it would probably kick open at negotiation time anyway, right?
Can I ask one question? I don't want to throw mud into it or anything, but what happens in 2 years if we decide not to do an HSA? What happens to the money in the accounts?
it stays with you.
Once it's put in that account, it's your savings account.
So the employees would keep that, say they had $10,400 in their account, they didn't use any of it, that would stay in their account even if we went back to a conventional plan.
Yeah, I still have mine from where I came, there's still money, and I still have the card
And it
for
functions.
certain qualified expenses.
So there's no negative to the employee by taking a chance, per se.
The only negative that I have understand is once you're on an HSA, the savings will never be for you to go back to a PPO. Is that correct? In wording, so typically there's about a 30% separation between an HSA and a PPO. So once you're there, you're there.
Because it makes financial sense to stay there?
That's just the way that's worked out, I guess.
That was probably inactive. Okay. What do you guys think? Think I have a good brilliant ideas?
I'm a little confused on why we would go past 2 years if we know we're gonna be renegotiating 2 contracts. And we're sitting waiting on an increase from the insurance, and we may have to make a decision from that. I know what you've heard. There have been entities locally that have gone back to PPOs from an HSA not that long ago. My feedback from those entities, at least the rank and file of those entities, has been they like the HSA better. I'm not speaking for the whole group, but, so I would think that if we fully fund it for 2 years, then the end of 2017 is going to be very interesting, but it's going to be something we're going to have to address one way or the other.
And I'm okay with that too. But if we put in there,
We gotta do the MOU, obviously, and make it, the language make sense for everybody involved. Year three's a, it's a crapshoot.
it's a crap.
My goal at year 3 would be to make us as whole as possible, okay? I mean, I think that's all of our goals, so that's not a strategic move, that's, we don't know what's facing us.
Sure.
You know, a new president changes this.
We don't know who's gonna be setting up here either. In 2 years, I might not be here, you might not be here, Steve might not be here, we all know, maybe 3 different people here.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
You may better answer this, and I know you guys talk about the HSA and the PPO. And I use this term loosely, but everyone uses it around here, is we have a Cadillac plan, and you said no longer will be available in 2 years, what we have now. So if we go to an
I don't think
HSA,
that's what he said, really, he said if we leave that plan, we won't be able to get it back.
That particular plan.
it's kind of going away, correct?
I think it's the style plan that we have today with the low deductible we have
Right.
today will probably not be available in the next couple of years.
So are we better suited if we stay with the PPO and it goes away, we could be closer to it, or if we go to the HSA and try to come back to it in 2 years, we're gonna be way off the mark instead of just a little below the plan we have now? Would it be harder to get closer to what we currently have, leaving it for 2 years, or if we keep it for 2 years, are we just gonna be bumped down a little bit where we are now?
Every so often, there's a point in time where on a financial standpoint, it makes sense to look at numbers, look at plans, and calculate those numbers. And I think right now, we have a very, very nice opportunity to capture, some premium savings, and a lot of premium savings, which would allow the township to, instead of paying that money to Anthem, keep some of that money in the township coffers and savings, and also then funnel some of that money to the employees instead of paying it to Anthem. So in year 1, it would be a win for the employee, win for the township, to about $300,000. Year 2, about $200,000. The third year, depending on the renewal, there's still going to be some, but, if the renewal's much above 20%, there's not gonna be much. But to continue on, how long do you wanna drive a car when you know they're not gonna probably in a couple more years make parts? I think the time now is to capture some of that savings, let the township invest some of that savings into the employee, let the employee enjoy a lower premium contribution out of their paycheck monthly. When I just look at it from a benefit and cost standpoint, it makes all the sense in the world.
Fair enough.
And that was the other strategy, Mr. Wade, I didn't share with you earlier with the Anthem PPO renewal, that kept our renewal rate a little bit higher, so as our contract reads, this group is supposed to meet yearly and go through this process again. So that gave us a higher renewal rate if we were to look at an HSA then, and having some of the forecasting on the Affordable Health Care Act into 2018, that would still give us the separation, hopefully, for funding the HSA a little bit longer than just 1 year. So,
I think we should, fund it fully for 2 years, and since the third year is gonna be contract time anyway, we can negotiate that at the time. That's what you said, Jason. I think
Yes,
that's what you had, Ron.
absolutely.
I don't have a problem with that. Actually, I don't have any problem with that. You know, this group today, I would expect if we're all here, it's gonna be a real easy thing to do. The real variable is if we're not here. That's the scariest part.
absolutely.
Which I get that. I understand. So does it make it less, I'll use the word scary, if we put something additional in the addendum to the contract that we would do, counselor, to say that instead of just 2 years, that we lock the funding into not more than this or something like that, not more than 15?
I think what Mr. Harmon has provided on his sheet is giving some leeway for a third year. If the renewal rates don't exceed the next amount, then you could award that into an MOU as well. But at that point in time, we're in negotiations. I know in talking to some of the non-union employees, it's scary as heck for them. So if there was something for a third year or a fourth year, I know it would make them feel a lot better. Plus, it gives me a little peace of mind too.
Well, we have a requirement, as I recall, to offer that same plan to everyone. So,
Whatever
Yeah,
we have always in the past, I don't know if we've got anything, whatever we've done for the union personnel, we do for the others,
Correct.
non-union.
for the non.
Yeah, and I would, oh, you gonna say something? Go ahead.
Well, I guess from a non-union, obviously, because we've always benefited from what the union's been able to do for insurance, and that's what we get. And to have discussion with the road department and the like of where are we gonna be and what are we gonna do, I've not heard that there is a definite number. Mr. Wade said 15% is maybe where we would go for our deductible. Is there a desire for it to be more than that, less than that? I think what I'm still looking for from the board is that direction. If we get there, will we expect we will pay 100%, 75%, 50%, 15%? So that we could then start through this process. We know we have 100% funding for 2 years, if that's where things are sounding. In third year, we won't be paying more than X. Then we can start planning. I think that is where I understand Obamacare and all the fun stuff. We don't know where we're gonna be, but this body locked us into 15% for premiums, and that's what we continue to do. What is the expectation of this body to lock us in for
That third year.
deductions? I mean, and I think that's where some of the angst is. We don't know what our numbers should be, because we don't know what your philosophy as a body is, and what you want it to be.
If I can offer you some thoughts in that regard, I know there are different things you can do to incentivize, a higher contribution from the township. There are things you can do, so I don't know that I try and hammer those out tonight. I know Frank had mentioned, if the increase is not more than this, then you do 100% again, and then graduate it up. There's different ways to engage people to do some proactive things, annual visits to the doctor, wellness programs. So I don't know that you can define what all those are, but I certainly would suggest that's the route you go, and then give it a scale of how much, with the bottom being X. I think that's fair, and then it gets people doing things that are good for their health and ultimately the use of the insurance.
I think county, they have incentive to get some additional dollars, and I know that's, a lot of people take great
A lot
advantage
of
of
people
it.
take advantage of it.
And I do know that none of the employees would be opposed to the insurance when I first heard it here, when it was 100% paid, if you're willing to do that.
That's what I thought you
It's
were
always
actually gonna
worth a
lead
shot.
with.
Do your best if you didn't mention that.
Okay, I got you. If the offer's not on the table, you can't consider it.
That's a very good point.
No, thank you.
And we're moving, and we're moving
I-
on.
Jeff, point well taken, so it would make people more comfortable if we said in that third year that 15% would be as much and maybe less, that the employee, or at least 15%, but hopefully not more, or not more.
In some direction.
As long as we've got the tremendous savings.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're gonna get to, as, if I'm understanding,
Do that.
Larry jumped in, if not, once we get into the HSA, comparing those to other HSAs are probably gonna be close. We're not gonna have this huge savings that we have now going from a PPO to an HSA.
Right.
So I think it's probably time to talk about, if we're talking philosophical differences of plans and expectations of where those plans would go, that we could hear where you guys' expectations were of employee contribution for deductibles.
Well, let's do the full 2 years fully funded and then employee contribution of 15% on the third year.
I think that makes sense.
I know we're not gonna have much savings at that point, I get that, because depending on the rate increases, depending on all kinds of things, we might not even have the plan available.
Are we able to throw in a little rider, as what Frank says, as long as the premium isn't more than increase of 20%, then you would consider the fully funded at the third year?
Well, I think we could absolutely say that we would consider that. Well, that's not locking us in, but we would consider that. I don't know, we wouldn't consider it.
And our hope would be there'd be no increase, but that's obviously not realistic.
Okay. Then let's, we need to get, you guys can get something written, and we can do that, that we can sign, and everybody read it and agree that that's what we're talking about here tonight. But do we need to do that at a special meeting so we can actually vote on that at the time?
Well, so there's a couple concerns, small c, I think, but that need to be addressed. Sorry for the dumb lawyer question, but when do you have to make payments to fully fund the